The first presenter will be Mary Lopez.
I'd like to share with you a true story about what it was like being born and raised in a mining booming town on the western frontier. Over 100 years ago, in a little town in Chihuahua in Old Mexico, there was a young man named Monico Santana. He was a carpenter. Monico heard that up north there was a new territory where there was a lot of building going on, lots of work available. He and his new bride, Juanita, headed up north to this land of opportunity. They traveled first to New Mexico. In Silver City, they lived a while and had a couple of children. Then they hit the road again, traveling in their covered wagon over rough and dangerous trails. They heard horror stories about the Indians, the Apaches, but luckily the only Indians they encountered were friendly. They crossed the Arizona frontier and settled in a mining town of Morenci, where Monico built and opened a general store. He also built a Catholic church in 1901, which is still standing when this photo was taken. With mines opening up across Arizona, Monico and Juanita moved their growing family to Rey, Sonora. He built and opened a hotel there. Monico's skills as a carpenter were in great demand. The United Verde Mining Company once in a while I have to breathe. The mining company offered him a contract in the booming town of Jerome. This is where he found his pot of gold. As Jerome, the second largest copper mine in the world, the town's fame spread far and wide. In the northern part of Spain, there was a young man named Toribio Vicente. He lived in a small village of Costramil. He worked as a miner. He learned how to handle dynamite. Toribio heard through the grapevine about a new world 6,000 miles away, where there were good-paying jobs for miners. So he took off. Leaving behind his 3 brothers and his family, he walked to Portugal, to the coast, caught a freighter across the Atlantic down to Cuba, worked his way through Old Mexico, and then on to North America. He kept going until he reached a territory named Arizona. He got jobs in the mine of Globe, Miami. These were really bad. The worst was the Superior mine. The miners were dying of black lung. Finally, he found a better job in Jerome. Good work, good pay, and he liked it. So in Jerome, he started his new life, just as Arizona began its new life as the 48th state. Of course, there's a love story. And so the young Toribio met and fell in love with one of Monico's daughters, the beautiful Margarita. They married and raised 4 children. I was the youngest. I was born in 1918. But this photo isn't me. That's my brother Ignacio. In Jerome back then, there were a lot of peddlers, and they would come in wagons, sold everything on the street. Fruits, vegetables, blocks of ice, even patent medicines. One day a photographer came by with his own goat cart and took this picture of Ignacio, sold it to my parents. When my brother Ignacio grew up, he went here to Brophy College. One of my earliest recollections is of me as a small child. I had the chicken pox. My brother Tony had the bad one, smallpox. That was in 1924. The epidemic almost wiped out the town. They were taking all the sick children to what they called the pest house. It was the local slaughterhouse, and it lived up to its name. To avoid taking their children to that fearful place, my aunts and my mother hid their sick children. When the health inspectors came to our house, my mother hid my brother Tony in a closet and me in a trunk. But the inspectors found us, quarantined our home, and took us to this dreaded pest house. Fortunately, all of our families survived. Epidemics can happen anywhere, but a more common danger in a mining town like Jerome were the accidents in the mine. This is a picture of my father drilling holes to place the dynamite. I remember one evening as we were walking down the street, we heard a tremendous blast and the ground shook on our feet. Lots of miners got killed. I was with my father at the time, who said sadly, "My paisanos are gone." They perished. The winters were very severe in Jerome. We played inside, pick-up sticks, Chinese checkers, cards. Our dad taught us how to play pangingi and poker, which I play to this day. Here's my picture of her. I played in Pacheco, California, won that tournament a couple of years ago. One winter we got a sled. My brother Tony and I went for a ride down a steep hill. This was a no-no. We lost control. I got tangled up in the guardrail along the edge of the drop-off. Tony sailed through the railing, landed on top of the roof of the house in the street below. The sled crashed in the 3rd Street. Boy, did we get a whipping. In the summer, we played inside games. Hide and seek, run, chippy, run. We went swimming in water holes, the river, lots of picnics. One summer, the boys made a wooden wagon with 4 odd wheels and a rope for steering. One day, we went for a ride down the hill and made a left turn into the Daisy Road. The wagon rolled over and over, blood all over the place. We really got hurt. Big time spanking. I also remember my father and mother building our home, which still stands. I saw it a few years ago. The artist who lives there let me walk through it. It was nice, but I remember it much bigger. My mother, Margarita, was a brilliant seamstress. She made all our clothes. She also sewed for the wealthy wives of the mine bosses and for the ladies of the night. I loved going with her for fittings with these ladies. They smelled so good and wore beautiful silk lingerie. And best of all, they gave me cookies and hot chocolate. Jerome people were fun-loving, good-time party-goers. We had lots of house parties, weddings, birthdays, baptism, and of course the big celebrations. 4th of July for American Independence Day, and 16th of September, Mexican Independence Day. One year, my sister Margaret was chosen the queen for the Mexican Independence Day celebration. My mother made her entire outfit. She even made the crown. I can just see us sitting by the window where the light was good. I would hand her the pearls and rhinestones as she wove them together with wire to make my sister's crown. We were all very proud of my sister as she rode down on her float on Main Street. All of a sudden, my father was gone from our lives. My mother opened a boarding house for the miners. One of the boarders had a car, and he would take us out on outings. One trip I would never forget was going clear to Prescott, about 30 miles away over a winding mountain road to see one of the first talkies, a talkie movie named Al Jolson, where he sang Sonny Boy. My life gets even better. I had wonderful teen years. In the center of town, there was a 2-story building, Miller's. The main floor were Miller's. It was the company store where we bought most of our groceries, clothes, etc. On the second floor was the town dance hall. We had a dance every 2 weeks with a real live band. One night at a dance, I saw this dark, handsome stranger looking at me. Our eyes locked. When the music started for the next dance, I felt a tap on my shoulder. This guy said, "Want to dance?" He took me in his arms. Oh. I thought I died and went to heaven. Love at first sight. 6 months later, his father came up from Clarkdale, where they live, to speak to my mother. On a bended knee, he asked my mother for my hand in marriage to his son. We were married in 1936. Soon after, the good days in Jerome came to an end. The copper ran out, smelter closed, everybody began to move away. Jerome became a ghost town. My family and I spent the war years in Los Angeles. My brother Tony was an Army officer. Here you see him with 2 of our cousins. When the war ended, my husband and I moved our growing family into Phoenix. That's where we raised our kids, right next door to my brother Tony and his family. Tony became the Phoenix City Finance Director in the early 1960s. He put the entire city finances on a computer system. He had a hard time convincing the city officials and the bankers that computers were the wave of the future. By the way, I just heard that his personal secretary lives in the Beatitudes. Helen, if you're here, come and say hello. About this time, I had my own brief adventures in politics. In 1960, a handsome young candidate came to Phoenix, and I went with friends to welcome him at the airport. The campaign manager loved our hats that I made. He invited us to pose with Senator Kennedy for the news cameras at all his appearances in town. We couldn't believe how many times we saw ourselves and our hats on TV the next few days. Those sewing lessons I learned at my mother's side back in Jerome came in handy and have lasted me a lifetime. Like her, I love to make my own clothes and the clothes for my family. Well, this hat I made for my daughter when we went to Ascot to the races in England. We saw the Queen that day. I always loved to dance, ever since those Saturday nights back in Jerome. At the age of 80, I belonged to a dance group which traveled all the way down to Hawaii. And here I am, on my 90th birthday. Everybody is laughing because I had just danced the Spanish dance my father taught me as a girl. This is my family, which started in Jerome and now has spread from Pacific Coast to the Atlantic. Today they are teachers, students, artists, dancers, some even like to sew. There's a lawyer, restaurant owner, a news producer, computer program, mechanic. And here is my daughter Carolina, who was also born in Jerome like me. I'd like you to meet her.
Well, thank you very much, Mary, for those stories.